Hi, fourth grade. You need your social studies newsletter. It's week 6, California Indians on the coast. So remember we talked about what the coast is? Think of the beach. That's the coast. That's where the ocean meets the land, okay? So go ahead and grab this. We're gonna read it together. We are going to read this together, and then you will have some questions that you need to answer at the end. And then on Friday, you are going to do on the very back page. This is due on Friday. You don't have to do it on Friday. I suggest you do it a different day. The What Do You Know activity, which is on the very back page of your newsletter. That's on Friday. And today we're going to read this entire newsletter together, and then you are going to answer questions on it, okay? So just like previous times, if you're confused on anything, go ahead and pause and rewind the video. Take that extra step and take that extra time to understand what's being read, what you're reading, really asking yourself those questions. Ooh, which group of Native Americans are we talking about? Where do they live? What do they eat? What is their culture like? So really be thinking about that when we're reading this together. So go ahead and grab it. We're gonna start on the very front page, the cover. It says, Peaceful Living on the Coast. More than 100 American Indian groups lived along California's coast and on the lands west of the Sierra Nevada. Remember, the Sierra Nevadas are the mountains, our mountain ranges. The Sierra Nevadas are also in Nevada and in California. So the sentence just said, more than 100 American Indian groups lived along California's coast and on the lands west of the Sierra Nevada. Even though they spoke many different languages, they learned to live in peace. The pleasant and fruitful land of California's coastal areas made many of these wandering groups want to stay. They rarely had wars. If researchers are correct about these facts, then California's American Indians had solved one of mankind's most difficult problems: how to live in peace with other nations. Coastal American Indians depended on the ocean and the freshwater rivers for their food and transportation. Their canoes were either dug out of redwood or made out of planks held together with twine. Twine, think of like a yarn. So it's a form of a yarn. So when you hear the word twine, oh, it's like yarn. An interesting food product that was very important to them was the acorn. Acorns were harvested in the fall. They ground them into flour for breads or mush. Acorns were very valuable in trade as well. Remember, they didn't have money. The Native Americans didn't use the money system. They used the trading system. So if you wanted something, then you would trade with your neighbors. The Hupa traded acorns with the Yurok in exchange for redwood canoes, seaweed, ocean fish, or mussels, which is a shellfish. Coastal American Indians used tantalum shells and woodpecker scalps as a form of money. The tantalum shells usually came from the Washington state coastal tribes, and others used to purchase goods or products. The wealthiest families had the most tantalum shells. The tantalum shells also helped keep the peace. They were used as blood money. When a person hurt or killed someone, a big go to the very back page. Right here on the back page, right by Let's Write. This is where the rest of the article is. Let me read that sentence again. You don't need to turn back with me, just listen. When a person hurt or killed someone, a big war could start, and many more could be killed if things were not settled right away. American Indians learned that it was sometimes better to give the victim's family a lot of money, which they used tantalum shells to prevent more bloodshed. That's where the term blood money came from. This idea of settling fights or crimes by paying the victim's family a lot of money has been used throughout history and all around the world. Blood money is mentioned in the Bible and is known as wergold in Anglo-Saxon history. Wergild in Anglo-Saxon history. Coastal American Indians were the first to meet Europeans when they began exploring this part of the continent. Once the Europeans arrived, it didn't take long for change to begin and cultures to begin to mix. Missions were built, we're going to be learning about that, and European rifles, metal tools, and cookware were soon found among most of the tribes living along the Pacific coast. So, this money system they used was completely different than our coin system. They used shells instead, and that was not their primary focus. They would trade goods and products with other tribes rather than always using the money system, right? So the money system, in a sense, was secondary. It means it wasn't the most important thing. Trading was the most important, and then it was the shells they used for money. Okay, so now we're going to open it up into the middle. And I just want you to take a look at what we're reading. Take a look at the pictures, take a look at the headings. Those are the titles, the big bolded words. Notice how under Pacific Coast American Indians, you see the Hoopa, the Chumash, the Miwok, and the Yurok, okay? I want you to be paying attention to these tribes because we're gonna be doing a project where we learn more about the Native American tribes of America. So we will have that coming up pretty soon. I'm not going to tell you when exactly because what's the fun in that? So Pacific Coast American Indians. The coastal people of early California lived off the sea. These people loved the land we now call home long before anyone else knew that such a beautiful place existed. In this issue, we will learn more about the coastal tribes who first made their homes in our state. The Hoopa. The northern Hoopa used trees to build plank houses and create many tools and pieces of art. So go ahead and put your hands up like this. Remember north, south, east, and west, okay? So when they say those directions, just be thinking of the north, south, east, and west, okay? So be thinking of that. You can also go like this, north, south, east, and west, okay? So you can put your fingers up like this or your arms, however your brain remembers. The Hoopa, so they were the northern Hoopa, used trees to build plank houses and create many tools and pieces of art. You might want to focus on what's so important about each tribe, about their characteristics. They were excellent carvers and woodworkers. Every September, Hoopa jumping dancers held a 10-day dance in a sacred spot, hoping to help the earth get ready for the coming year. The dancers wore crowns of sea lion tusks and carried sacred obsidian knives. Their headdresses were wolf pelts, and before Hoopa hunters went out to catch deer, they would hide their human smell by bathing and standing in the smoke of their fire. During the salmon runs, they used nets, baskets, spears, and hooks to capture food for their families. So we just learned the type of houses, the types of tools they used, what they did, what they were excellent at. We learned about their hunting skills, what they would do for hunting in the rivers and oceans, and then what they would do, and then how they would hunt on land. So those are all important things I want you to be focused on. The Chumash. In many ways, the Chumash were among the most advanced of all California tribes. When Europeans first discovered them in 1542, they found the Chumash villages filled with large dome-shaped homes. Dome-shaped is like this. This is a dome. A dome is like this. Made of willow poles covered with grass mats. These large buildings housed between 40 and 50 people. Those are very large houses if you can fit that many people in them. The houses were divided into rooms with platform beds supported on poles. So think bunk beds. The Chumash were skillful wood carvers and made beautiful polished pots. They carved animals, birds, and fish in soapstone. They traveled the sea in large plank canoes that sometimes measured as long as 30 feet. The planks for these canoes were made by splitting wood that had washed up on shore. The Chumash then drilled small holes along the edges of the planks and joined them together with cord. Bitumen in the cracks made the canoes watertight. So you would definitely want to have your vessel that you are putting inside the ocean or the river to not have water leaks, right? So that bitumen helped seal the cracks. So if you're in the boat or the canoe, it would not sink. The Miwok. The coastal Miwok settled near San Francisco at least 3,000 years ago. They were not a tribe, but they were a group of people who lived in the same area and spoke the same language. They rarely went to war, and they enjoyed eating all kinds of animals, including, listen, skunk, bat, and some species of snakes. The Miwok were also famous for their beautiful watertight baskets. They built their homes partly in the ground and covered them with poles and earth or grass. They had a simple ceremony each year to express their wish for plenty of acorns. The Miwok used acorn flour for making breads and mush. That sounds like another tribe we learned about and we just read about. The Yurok. The Yurok did not have tribes. Their small communities were groups of individual families who owned rights to certain fishing or hunting grounds near the coast or the Klamath River. Often the most wealthy man in a group of villages was consulted for advice, but he had no authority over the others. The Yurok had women priestesses who claimed the power to cure illness. The Yurok's canoes were usually made of redwood and designed for streams, not rugged ocean travel. If a whale became trapped near shore, the wealthiest family in the community could take the largest pieces. Other favorite foods included salmon, seals, sea lions, marine fish, mollusks, shorebirds, migratory waterfowl, that means fish that would only come at specific times. So there's different types of fish that migrate to different times of years. So instead of naming all of those different fish, the author thought it would be best to put migratory waterfowl. So that means migrating means you move from place to place at different times of the year. Waterfowl, water, and then fowl, so they're fish. Migratory waterfowl. Bear, elk, deer, and rabbits. I don't know where bird came from. So go ahead and take a look at the pictures. Number one, look at the number one and the caption for number one. That's a hoopa man. Number two is a hoopa man fishing for salmon. Number three is the coastal Indians kept acorns in storehouses called caches. So that's their version of a pantry, just like you guys have pantries at home with all of your snacks where you store food. That's what they would use as their pantries, and they called them caches. Number four is a Chumash man. Number five is a Miwok woman holds a sifting basket. A sifting basket is when you want to get the big chunks of items out of the small grain, so it sifts it. Number six is a Yurok man fishing. So let's look under where the big heading says loyalty. Loyalty, are you a sports fan? Do you have a favorite team? You probably jump and scream for joy when they win a game. Does it make you gloomy when they lose? Chances are that you still say that they're the best team ever, and you go back cheering even louder for their next game. This is called loyalty. The loyalty is a very important character trait to have. It's great to be loyal to your favorite team or even your favorite movie star, but it's much more important to be loyal to your family and friends. It's easy to love the people around you when everything is going great. But what do you do when they make mistakes? Do you stick by them through thick and thin? If you do, then you are being loyal. Your loyalty will help them throughout the rough times and celebrate the great times. There was a spelling error. I had to change the wording. How long can seeds last? Ooh. Under the right conditions, seeds can last for thousands of years. When King Tut's tomb in Egypt was opened, scientists found that some bean seeds were nearly 3,400 years old. Later, these were successfully sprouted. Wheat from ancient Europe has also been successfully grown. In Canada's Yukon, a bird's nest that had been frozen since the last ice age, at least 10,000 years ago, contained some tundra lupine seeds. Whoa. The seeds sprouted and one of the plants bloomed. Researchers continue to find more examples of seeds like that. Under the right conditions, keep on giving. So, using acorns for food. In several areas of California, small rounded grinding holes can be found in the rocks left by ancient American Indians who once lived nearby. These grinding holes were placed where the early coastal American Indians used to grind acorns into flour. While they may be small, acorns are very nutritious. They were an important source of food for early Californians. These little nuts were very valuable and were traded for canoes, fish, tools, and the rights to use hunting grounds. Preparing acorns for food took a lot of work. The nut was cracked open with a rock, the shell was peeled off, and the nut was then poured into flour. The acorn contains tannic acid, which makes it taste very bitter. Before the American Indians could use the acorn flour, they had to rinse it with water over and over until all the bitterness was removed. Once the tannic acid was removed, the acorn flour was used to make soup or mush. The ancient way of making acorn mush was to put the flour into a watertight basket, drop in a few hot rocks, and stir until the mush was cooked. That's an interesting way. Have you ever seen that? Acorn flour was also made into a batter and fried into acorn pancakes. Today, people use acorn flour in recipes for cakes, breads, and muffins, and they also enjoy eating the nuts roasted or boiled. Last one, whales. The largest creatures to ever set fin in our coast are the whales, in all their varieties. Whales can be spotted during their spring and fall migrations. They like to spend their summers in the cool Arctic and then move south to the tropics for the winter months. California's coast is near their migration route. Among these numbers are the gray, blue, piked, humpback, and finback whales. Whales are strong and can swim across ocean currents. They have few enemies. As the whales push along, their great movement in the water is marked by frequent geysers, and spouts of water when they blow off air as they breathe. If you visit the coast during these migrations, you won't be the only curious onlooker as the whales go by. Families of dolphins also like to join the parade. And who knows, maybe the whales and dolphins are looking at the funny little creature with no scales or a hairy head standing on the beach. You! So that is what we've read today. You have questions on your Google form. Now, whatever the question is on the Google form, I want you to read that question and find the keywords in that question. If the question says coastal tribes, you might want to go to where in the middle of the section where it talked about the different coastal tribes, right? What if they say acorn? Well, there was many times where they talked about acorns, but first place you would want to look is obviously where they talked about acorns, right? What if they were talking about a specific animal? Obviously, the whales were the only, they weren't the only animal that we spoke about, but they're the only whales that have their own specific section in this newsletter. So it's putting those little clues and those pieces of the puzzle together and using your detective hat. Now, these questions are supposed to help you reread and really look for the answers, all right? Social studies is a little bit difficult, but you have to take that extra time and slow down, reread, stop, refocus your brain, look for the keywords. Everything that we talk about almost every day, I need you to put those skills into use. Now, if you become so frustrated, you've taken a deep breath, you've reread the question, you've read the question out loud, you need to, and you still don't understand what the question is asking you, or you need help finding the answer, you need to send me a private message. Now, when you send me that private message, I'm going to double check that you have taken a deep breath. that you're rereading the question. You're reading the question out loud. But do not become so frustrated where you're building up that emotion inside, okay? So ask for help before you get super, super frustrated. Okay, my friends, great luck, and I will talk to you later.